Marie used to talk about you all the time. I don't think I ever met you.
Are you ready?
Ready?
Great.
Wait a minute, not ready.
Okay, I'm going to give an introduction. So I'm
Go.
ready. Thanks, everybody, for coming today. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad Nelson was kind enough to sign up to present. And for those of you who are not familiar with our format, I'm just going to run through it quickly so that everybody's on the same page. All right. So we allow our speaker to speak uninterrupted for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever he wants to take. If it's 10, that's fine. But we allow them to speak uninterrupted until they're done. If the speaker does go too long, I'll give them a cutoff signal. Anyway, then we always like, or at least I like, to take a minute just of silence to let Nelson's words kind of sink in and for us to just breathe. After that break, we'll take questions. And if you have a question for Nelson, raise your hand. I'll bring you the microphone so both so both the question and the answer can be recorded. As always, Nelson does not have to answer any questions he does not wish to answer. So, without further ado, Nelson Maurice.
Amendments to the rules that were just expounded. You may interrupt at any time to cheer. You may not boo or hiss because that sounds terrible in my hearing aids. You can cry. Yeah, that'll be okay. Um, I'm Nelson Maurice. I was active in the church from '04 until my health got crappy. Um, and so I have not been coming for 7, 8 years. I don't know, for a while. So a lot of you may not know me. Um, I'm slowly remembering your face, the woman there in the dark glasses. Yes, yes. Who are you? No, no, behind Camila. And say your name right. Ruth Robertson. You're new. Okay. Well, I guess I'm new again. It's like starting over as a virgin for the third time. Um, it started anyway. I started in '04, went until my health got crappy. Um, and and uh, continued to pay dues, continued to be an active member. I'm still paying. I got a very nice letter from the president of the board, the minister, that says when you die, you can have a free funeral here. I'm an honored senior now. Um, I'm 83 years old. That's many, but it's too hard to do that. Um, I've been married twice and partnered once, and so I've had three significant breakups. The most recent one was in April of this year from Jan Wheeler, who many of you know. And Jan said, that's it, and stormed out one day and moved back to Kearney, Missouri, and is going through those exciting things of establishing a life. She's bought a car. She's gotten a house of her own. I don't know if she's renting or buying. Um, and she's got grandkids up there and um, are there great grandkids? She's got grandkids up there. Um, I now have two great grandkids. They came and visited in June. And bless their little hearts, they strengthen my immune system. I was sick for all of the rest of June and half of July, and uh, that's what life is like. Um, I'm an Easterner. I'm from New York. I was born in New York in Sleepy Hollow, New York, on the banks of the Hudson River, where Washington Irving set his uh, Legend of Sleepy Hollow or Tales of Sleepy Hollow. I forget what the exact name was. And, um, he named some of the characters after people then living in the village, and it's a nice thing to have. Our high school team, we were the Headless Horsemen, and and there's a great aqueduct that passes behind the. We're down on on the banks of the Hudson, and then there's some foothills that keep the Hudson in its channel. On top of our foothills, the Rockefeller Estates, and at the bottom of the foothills is our high school, and an aqueduct passes and carries water to New York City. It collects water in in the Catskills. There are two big ranges of mountains in New York State, and the New York and the Catskills in the southern part, and then in the northern part there's the Adirondacks. Thank you, and they are both part of the Appalachian chain. So I guess if I was over there, I'd be hillbilly. Um, and they collect water over there in big lakes and pipe it under the river and then down along our side of the river in an aqueduct. And we're built right up against the aqueduct, and our football field is on the other side. And there's woods there. That area's got to be kept clean and protect the aqueduct. And so our football team dresses up in the gym, and they go up into the woods, and there they meet a tall, handsome black stallion with a headless rider on it. And the rider comes down onto the field, and and then all of our high school football players come trooping behind. They think they're Mahomes and so on. It's worth a pizza anyway. Um, so I'm 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 bicultural. My parents are Quebecois. That's what we call people who come from Quebec. The Anglos call them French Canadian, and we say "fuck you," we're Quebecois. And and I lived. My father and mother lived in little villages. If you draw a line straight south from Quebec and straight east from Montreal, that's the eastern townships of Quebec, and they lived in that area. And I remember going to the village of one of them, and they had all these the tombstones with French names on them, and they had a bunch of tombstones with English names on them. Yeah, the English conquered New France in 1763, and it was English controlled thereafter. Um, and there were Nelsons, and so when my parents came to birthing me, it was during the war, 1942, Nelson Rockefeller was secretary of some undersecretary of the Treasury, and he was on the cover of Life magazine, and I can just imagine my father sitting in the waiting room. Yeah, that's not a Rockefeller, and telling my mother about it, and she goes, Nelson would be a good name. So I've been Nelson Maurice all my life, an English name and a French name. And everybody calls me Maurice, and I go, "Oh God, no, it's Nelson." Yeah, and so I do that all the time with everybody. Go to Paris, go to the airline counter, and the woman, the clerk there says, "Eh bien, Monsieur de Nelson, qu'est-ce que c'est qu'on..." And I cry, "No, je m'appelle Nelson Maurice." Yeah, we got it straightened out. So, factory kid, my dad worked in a Chevy factory. My mom worked in a wire factory. I should have grown up to be a hoodlum bum. Um, um, but we got good education because there was a great middle class and great upper class there, and I benefited from that. And uh, 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 went off to college, met a girl, married the first woman I ever had sex with. I don't think that ever happened in the world before. We went to Honduras as Peace Corps volunteers. After that, I stayed and I worked for the American Embassy for USAID. And so I was there for a total of 5 years, learning to speak another language. You can't do it in school. If you've ever studied French or Spanish or German or whatever, and didn't learn it from high school, it's not your fault. You're not stupid. You didn't get a chance to go live there for an extended time. That's what's necessary. I got 5 years. I speak Spanish very well. I talk to all the work crews wherever I go, and keep it brushed up. I started out speaking French. I didn't learn English until I was old enough to leave the house and go out and play in the streets. And come back from Peace Corps, and I was speaking Spanish much better than French, and my parents were ashamed of me. I'll give them better things to be ashamed of. Um, went to graduate school, got a degree in business. There's Ginger tapping her watch. I'm tapping my help. I've fallen and can't get up again thing. Um, and studied insurance. I, we When I was in Honduras, one of the things I did was help start credit unions. Well, my parents my father had been involved in credit unions, and in Canada, the English controlled everything, and the French were an underclass, and they were not allowed to control anything. They did not have control of any banking institutions. So what they did was the parish priest would hold money for people, and they called that caisse populaire, a popular box or the people's box. And that merged, connected with the early 1800s in France and Germany. Farmers said, hey, Hail, you think this is merging? This is all a story. It's not wandering. Hail storms have a particular form. They're a quarter mile wide and 10 miles long. And they just obliterate all the growing crops along the way. And so the farmers said, well, let's band together and create mutual protection societies, right? Well, that idea spread through the French-speaking areas. In England, they they were setting up, beginning in the 1840s, um, things that we now call credit unions, doing the same thing, where people, well, industrialization really began in England, and and the factory workers were doing that. And I'm sorry, I've forgotten the names of the places and the people, but they pulled that together. So I'm sitting in Honduras organizing credit unions. We created a federation. We got about 100 credit unions going in the country. We got a loan from the US government to the Honduran government, and from the Honduran government to the Credit Union Federation. So we had a banking system. Credit union maybe amassed $50,000 from its members, and this is farmers in villages or workers in the few factories that there were there. And and with that as a base, then we would lend them $100,000, and they could lend a hell of a lot more. And we got a thing going, and then and then we said to ourselves, what the hell are we going to do if there's a hurricane? And it wipes out all of these credit unions at once, and it destroys the credit union, the structure, and it destroys the federation in Honduras of credit unions. And, and it's just all gone. Uh, we have to protect the structure. And and so I got interested in crop insurance and wrote a letter to the U.S. Department of Agriculture about crop insurance and looked for ways to set that up to protect that. And and then I left. My time ran out, and I don't have any more of that story to tell you. But a big hurricane came along, Hurricane Mitch, wiped out Honduras, and I think the U.S. government just went in with aid and just helped put them back on their feet and whatnot. Meantime, I went to University of Wisconsin, got a master's in business and a PhD, all but dissertation, ABD. I've got a huge writing block. I agreed 2 months ago to come and talk here, and I said I got to sit down and write my talking points. Well, it got down to yesterday. I knew it would, you know. I went to the bathroom 3 times yesterday. I did everything and finally said to hell with it, went to bed. And so you're you're getting at this point in my life and in your lives, you've told your life story often enough. And um, uh, uh, so I went back to USDA and got a job at USDA working for crop insurance, just as an assistant to the manager, you know. I said, why not be deputy managers? Because a deputy manager is somebody, you're nobody. Just take this job and be happy to have it. I was happy to have it. I I've worked on everything and realized that the common thread of all my jobs, all my life, was having new problems that I had never faced before. One day I had to drive up to Cape Cod after work on Friday and start the groundwork for a cranberry crop insurance program. There are things that kill cranberries. And the all risk crop insurance program that the US government does isn't just hail, but it's everything that kills the crop except failure to follow proper farming practices. And so drought and insects and tornadoes and hail, and you name it, they're all there. Um, so we moved in. We got a new law in '85. They set up the program in 1938. This is Franklin Roosevelt, and nobody had done this in the world. They'd heard of hail insurance. And the Republicans and the private crop hail insurance companies fought it, but FDR was spending money and getting people out of the problems they were in, and they wanted it. So we ran a loss ratio. Loss ratio is your losses divided by premium. So if your losses are less than your premium, it'll be under 100. And if you're around 70, you've got room to cover your admin costs plus profit. Well, we would hit 160, typically 180. And then we'd go in and rewrite the policy. Oh, here's what we're doing that's wrong. And just slowly with time brought it down. Um, so that by 1985, we were getting under 100 all the time. The federal government was paying the admin costs. So for us, that was the proper way to manage that. Today, they're up over 100. I think they're up around 140 different crops. And um, uh, Dory has a necklace of white and black pearls on. We were insuring the clams in the Mississippi Bayou that fish farmers would grow. No, we didn't guarantee pearls, just that they would put a sack of small pearls down and bring up big pearls a year later. Uh, Clams. Anyway, they did that. That went great. I got I got married before I went to Honduras. Had two kids in the 5 years I was there. Came back 1976 for the bicentennial. We got divorced. Oh, God, divorce is painful. And I was destroyed. I was single for about 10 years. Uh, Married another woman, and she was really wonderful. Uh, I don't think anybody here ever met her. Roseanne, she and I broke up after about 15 years. And I remember walking into my boss. I was working for USDA here in Kansas City and saying, well, I'm going to be a little crazy for the next 2 years. And then I explained why. And he said, oh, I will be sympathetic. Now get the hell out of here. Um, and it went fine. Eventually, I met Jan Wheeler, that some of you know. Yeah. Um, and then for the next year is the sesquicentennial, 250 years of American America going through history, and damn it, Trump is going to be there, having a Trump parade in the middle of it or something like that. Yes, I can see a little emoji on my cell phone that looks just like that. Yes. Um, and uh, finally, in uh, after the second divorce, I got on Match.com. I was the shyest kid when I was a little kid. The earliest photograph of myself, I have one as an infant, about a year old, trying to get out of my baby carriage. But then I have one of seven, at the day of my first Holy Communion, rite of passage in the Catholic Church. And my mother had gotten a suit. They must pass them from family to family, a suit and white shirt and a tie. I don't remember wearing it again. I was so skinny and so weird looking in it, but it was me. I can't deny it. And shy. I was shy. My older brother was extremely mean. I mean, very mean. Um, and my parents were good loving people, but they didn't know how to protect me from my brother. And so he and I would go to bed in the bedroom, and he'd go to tease me, whatever that was for, and tell me I was no good, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but in life, interesting thing is, in life, wherever you start out on, whatever um, whatever scale, think of an XY coordinate, and and this one is measuring shyness versus extroversion, introversion versus extroversion. And I was way on the left end. In life, you always move towards the middle. If you're an extrovert, you know that people think you're a pain in the ass 3/4 of the times, and you learn to tone it down. And if you're shy, you realize that you're just holding yourself back from having fun. So after my first divorce in 76, I got at the day after we decided to get divorced, I got into therapy the next day. So next year will be my 50th year of shrinking. As I move from city to city, I've changed shrinks. As they've grown old and died, I've changed shrink. But I'm still shrinking. When COVID came, my shrink said her practice dwindling. She says, "I'll come to your apartment." So she still comes every Friday morning to my apartment. We are now moving in to the second Trump COVID wave. There is another wave that has just begun, and we have that, you know what, RFK running the health system. This could be a bad, dangerous thing. Purchased uh, I've purchased 100 face masks. Um, I've hired a now. I'm now living alone. I'm physically handicapped. I'm healthy. My heart's good. All the things are good. The thing that killed me is going to kill me is not yet present in my body. It's just the body is screwed up, and so I have to count on friends to help me get here and on time. I think we were only 3 minutes late. Hooray! Um, so um, I'm going along now, and I'm hired. I've hired a group called Advocates for Seniors, uh, who are paralegals. They're people who worked in lawyers' offices, but were not lawyers. They learned a lot about the law. And at the same time, they are social workers, MSW social workers, right? A nice combination of skills.
Yeah.
So they set up a little company called Advocates for Seniors. And first thing they did was they brought in some people for me to interview. And I picked one of them. And they put a person who comes into my apartment. I live in Oak Hall, which is at the other end of this block. They come into my apartment one day a week. And we drive down to Brookside and go to Cosentino's and do my food shopping. Drop me at the barber shop there in Brookside. I get a haircut, and they use that time to come home and take my clothes out of the washer and put them in the dryer. Come back and pick me up, and then we go do something else. Um, a person to help me in my home. I am living in a 12-story condominium in a perfectly nice, perfectly safe, uh, adequate facility. It's got balconies. I look over Brush Creek and I look at the birds flying by and the crows when they flock. What do you call it when the crows all come together and
Murder.
it?
Murder.
No, 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 not a flock of crows. But in the summer, they're solitary and they go every
Oh.
place. In the winter, they go to a rookery. And so they all come, there's a rookery down on Brush Creek, and you walk down there and got, I remember when I lived on the other side of the Nelson in a great old house. In the winter, they'd come and I'd put the garbage bags out at night, and they'd pick them up in the morning. But the crows would get at those nice white garbage bags and peck on them and pull out the good stuff. Right? I started putting pepper on the garbage bags to slow them down. And you ever heard of crows? They can get pretty bad. So, so I, I now have, I now have, um, I'm now restructuring my life. And again, for the umpteenth time, and I realize I'm driving my life. When I was very young, I didn't want to go in the military because I didn't want to be socialized in the way that the military was socialized me. And I joined the Peace Corps, and sure enough, Vietnam comes along, and I'm deferred because I'm in Peace Corps, and the Peace Corps is over, and I have two kids, and I managed to avoid Vietnam by making little life choices that were legitimate, but little. It didn't help me politically. I can't say this when I'm running for office. And I've never run for office. I'm too shy. Yeah, you can tell that I'm still shy. Um, um, so um, I'm living in that house, and my my need is for community. So going shopping, I get to see the people in the grocery store. the other day I take the little electric cart around and we've got everything loaded in and we pick up a couple gallons of distilled water. I need that for my CPAP machine at night. Um, and I put that on the base of the cart because the basket is filled with things that are soft and will get crushed. And we check out and pay for it. And 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 we're halfway to driving out, and the my home helper, who I got from that support chain that I've built, um, says, "You see that? That woman behind us paid for your distilled water." And I look down at my cart, and there's 2 gallons of distilled water. And she comes by with her few things, and I say, "Oh, let me pay you for that." It'd be $3. No, no, that's okay. And she troops off, and I go in my cart with my helper coming by, and I tell my helper, "Okay, take that bouquet of flowers we just bought and go give it to her." She, and she said, "Yeah, the woman's over there getting into that white Maserati." Yeah, that's the kind of women I want to flirt with. Oh, I did that. I watched a great, but my ambitions have changed.
Ah,
You know what they used to be. They used to be getting great looking woman, big hips, big, you know what, and into bed, smart, liberal, progressive, oh, God, with a whip, whip sharp sense of humor. Yeah. Now I saw a movie the other day called Our Souls at Night with Robert Redford and Jane Fonda. And and it's on Netflix, yeah. And and they're both older. They're both in their early 70s or something, children. And widow and widower living a block or two apart in a small farming community. Think Indiana, think Nebraska, something like that, right? And she comes over and goes up the board steps onto the front porch of his house and knocks on his door. And he comes and opens the screen door, and you can hear the springs stretching. And he says, "Hi," trying to remember what her name is. He said, nodded hello to her a million times, and then he remembers her name. And she says, "Would you like to sleep with me?" Have you ever watched The Holiday, a rom-com where a woman in California breaks up with her husband and a woman in England breaks up with her boyfriend and they switch houses? And the one from California goes to Surrey and lives in a little cottage. And the brother of the woman she switched with shows up. And and she just wants to get away from men. But that first evening, he comes in. He'd been in town drinking, and he needed to go pee. And he thought he'd stop in his sister's house. You think I'm roaming? It all ties together. Keep with me now. Um, um, and so I'm trying to remember the name of that actor. Um, huh? Say it again.
Jude Law.
Jude Law, yeah. And and she is Cameron Diaz? Cameron Diaz. And she says to him, "Would you like to sleep with me?" Well, same line as in Our Souls at Night. And Jude Law says, Is that a trick question? But our couple here, the 70-year-olds in the Midwest someplace, they start talking. And she said, look, I'd like to have somebody to talk to. And the next scene, you see him, he's got a paper shopping bag, the top curled up. And he's got, clean underwear and a shirt, probably enough, same pants the next day. Just clean underwear would be enough. And he's trooping up the street, and they go in and they get in bed and they start talking. And next thing you know, she's got a son who's just gotten divorced, and he can't, doesn't have his life taken care of. So she takes his son, her grandson, come live with her. So our two protagonists now have a little community of two, and the grandson makes it three. And so Robert Redford goes up in the attic and he gets his old Lionel train set and sets it up, and he does that. Then he goes out to the ballpark and teaches the kid how to pitch or hit or whatever. And then they go camping and he teaches them how to put up a tent, and they do that stuff. If you ever lived in a farm community, it buzzes.
We're past time.
Did you learn that from her?
I'm just telling you, we're past time.
I've seen you doing that the whole while. Now she's doing it. She caught it.
Time for questions.
Okay, let me finish. I'll be quick. So, um, this uh, Jane Fonda's son. Oh, the people in the community, the men at coffee in the morning, again giving him shit, and he struggles. They go out to dinner in town, and everybody looks at him. Um, they're announcing their presence, and the town is reacting. The son says, it isn't right that my mother is sleeping with this man and she's not married. And so he takes his son back. And then he says, you're not safe living on your own. You got to come live with me and take care of my child. Um, and and so it ends tragically. But my fantasy now at 83 is our souls at night. Amen.
All right, let's take a minute, please, and just breathe.
You're going to lead a prayer?
No, we're going to just breathe. Wait, wait, wait. It's not during the breathe time. Thank you. I know. Okay, so we can take the, excuse me, we can take the offering while everyone contemplates that if they knock on Nelson's door, he may be expecting a question that they may not be willing to. But we do have questions, and Carol, you're first.
So I'm going to make a guess, and you probably have to correct me, that you showed up at All Souls because of something about community. Or I'd like to know something about what we mean and what that's done to your looking at what makes the world work.
I'm not sure. Hold on, Carol. I'm not sure that I understood your question. You want to know what the All Souls community did to me for me.
That's good. Yeah. How you got here and that, whatever. Yeah.
Okay. Um, After my second breakup from that woman that I really loved, and three relationships, and I couldn't make any of them work all the way to the end. The end came too soon. Anyway, I started dating. Remember, I was a shy kid, never had a date in high school, never had a date in college. Married the first woman in college that I had sex with. And really, a socially dysfunctional adolescent person. Um, After the second divorce, I got on Match.com. I wound up having about 150 dates on Match.com. You know, lunch dates, coffee dates, and just meeting lots of people. I met one woman in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, and she was a UU, and I flew down there and stayed with her one weekend. Sent my kids an email. I said, I'm going to go visit this woman in Tulsa. Her name is this, her address is this. If her phone number is this, if you never hear from me again. Anyway, she and I dated. She was Jewish, and it was great. God, I was on the minister selection committee when we picked Kendall Gibbons, and I was arguing on that committee. We ought to think about hiring a rabbi to be our UU minister, but nobody had the vision that I had. Um, I, uh, she was a UU in Tulsa. Came from a Jewish family, but she was UU, and when she came up here, she says, "You really should join your UU church." So she grabbed me by the earlobe, this one, my left earlobe, and she walked me over to here. And Jim Eller was here, and I joined in '04 and was active until my health got bad. And I ran the men's group for 8 years, I think, with Bob Jameson. And we had a great men's group. What you really need for leaders of things like that is a person who attracts other people. And Jameson was that person. My job, what I did was I just I ran the meeting. I made sure that everybody talked, and the quiet ones who never talked, I, near the end, 5 minutes from at the end, I said, "You got a question, James?" I can't remember his name now. James Warren, yeah, and James knew that he was on the spot, and he would always make a comment or question, and it was good and it was intelligent. I know he grew and felt better from doing that rather than just hiding. He would come to the meetings, which meant he wanted to be with people, but he didn't have the skills to be with people. And I had the skills as a leader to bring him out. The meeting would break up, and I was still not far enough over on that scale that I mentioned at the beginning. We in this room, we'd walk away from the tables and we'd be in groups of two, three, four, and I would never approach him because I couldn't go and talk to a group of other people. I can function when I have a role. My role right now is guest speaker, and I can be a normal human being in my role. and it's just the way it is. So I always try to get myself into positions where I'm a role and have a role, and then I get beyond my craziness. And also, All Souls gave me, I don't know, 10 years of active. Oh, I worked with Ari, I worked with the kids, and Judy, what was Judy's last name? Katie. Judy Katie would always give me the most shy and backwards kids. Why? Because I was shy, and she thought I would work on them. And I remember I had one kid who eventually went in the Air Force and is now in Okinawa or someplace. Um, and I set up a double date with the Westra's daughter, the youngest daughter
Mika.
of the Westers. Anybody remember her?
Mika.
Huh?
Anamika.
These, these hearing aids are crappy. Yeah. Yes, Mika, Mika. Yes, you're right. So I actually did a double date, me, the other adult, and the two kids, Mika and my kid, James. And we did something. We went over to the museum, or I don't know what, you know. I just look for ways to get through the kids and getting through my own inabilities to do it on my own. He couldn't hear and I couldn't talk. So
Hey, Nelson,
All Souls gave me a lot. Hey, hi.
Bill Rainey,
Yes,
you and I taught a class together. Do you remember?
yes.
The faith of the founding fathers, maybe? Well, you were very professorial then, and you're still very professorial. Why were you never a professor?
Yeah, I am. People have always said that.
And you never decided to become a college professor? Why?
Oh, I would have liked to, but you know, just as bad as being a high school or any other level of teacher, you got to do lesson plans. I knew 2 months ago I had to come here, and yesterday I still hadn't sat down. And what the hell do I need to do? I just needed to make a list of points. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here are things to touch. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't do that in the school. Are you wanting to talk? Or are you confessing?
Yeah, and I'm surprised to hear you say that because I was in a group where we were forming the current mission statement,
Yes.
and we fumbled around for 2 or 3 weeks, and one night you came in and you had the mission statement written almost exactly, word for word the way it is today. And they're beautiful. And I was just when you said you had a hard time writing, writer's block, I was shocked because that was the experience I had with you was and you were, I think that mission statement is marvelous.
That I remember that. That was a collaborative process. Somebody did a first draft. The group met. We talked on it, and 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 then I took it and um, I did my thing with it, and I did a good job. And the church still has that same mission statement today, with maybe very minor modification. That is great to hear. One of the things I did was when I was working for USDA, uh, um, we 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 had Carter and Mondale in charge of the U.S. government, and we got through Congress a revision of the Crop Insurance Act. And it moved us from being an experimental program to allowing us to expand and being just a fully national program, all crops. And Carter and Mondale lost. Reagan came in, and they found that we had language in the new law that said we could use private insurance companies to deliver our product. And that had been necessary to put that in so that we could mollify the U.S. private crop hail insurance companies who didn't want any damn, Democrat, socialist thing overrunning them. So we opened the door, and only Carter Mondale had no intention of opening it to the private companies. Reagan comes in and we open it to the private companies. We get a whole bunch of them, and the the U.S. government now is in a position of stepping back from being insuring the farmers directly to insuring the companies that insure the farmers. So we set up a reinsurance policy. Somebody else sets it up, and he does it totally wrong. And they have losses, and we just wipe out a bunch of these little companies, and it's crap. So I read a memo to the head of the agency with 21 recommendations. Here's how we should restructure the reinsurance agreement. And it comes back with yes, 19 of them. They we form a little committee, and every day I draft portions of the reinsurance agreement and give it to the USDA lawyers, who are really DOJ lawyers. And they give it back to me. And then that night I redraw it. The next day I give it to them again. And next evening they give it back to me. Next day, next evening. So I'm working nights doing that and coming to work, around noon and so on. Well, we get it all done, and that's that's like the mission statement, but it's a bigger document, and it's still in place. And everybody who's tweaked a word in it thinks that they have done a major revision. But it was like that one, and I'm, as you can tell, I'm very proud, and now I will zip it.
Thank you very much.
You.
But we take your word for it. You did a great